Hello, subscribers and non-subscribers. This is actually the first episode of Robocraft, which is a game on Steam. It's free to play. I'll go ahead and actually put a link in the description of this video and, of course, all the other videos for the series for where you can download it. And you can download it off their website and Steam, so I'll provide a link to both. Especially since they also got to register anyway, so might as well go ahead and give you the link for the main page so you can go ahead and just register while you wait for it to download via Steam. But yeah, so it is, well, just a little combat game. You build yourself essentially this little robot, sort of in a Minecraft-esque style is the best way I can describe it personally. Well, that or Space Engineers, one of the two. It doesn't really matter to me either which one you want to try to compare it to. It's just a very simple sort of basic building. The one I'm using right now is really just a very basic modification of the default that you get. All because, to be honest, I just am too lazy to try to get too creative right now, especially since I don't really have too much in the way of technology and things like that to be able to build up, because there's a tech tree which you slowly progress up. Oh, well, not slowly. It's actually not that bad, to be honest, at least in the earlier tiers, but then again, a lot of free-to-play games are like that. They're not too bad in the early tiers, but as you get towards the higher tiers, it takes significantly longer than it did before. But I kind of hope this game doesn't run into that issue for me. It's one of the main reasons why I don't play too many free-to-play games, and it's one of the reasons why I don't play War Thunder as much as I would like to, and I would realistically have to be able to actually get to the higher tiers in a reasonable time span for that game. Is all because I just don't play it enough because of the fact that it takes so long. But yeah, nonetheless, I think this game's actually kind of fun, to be honest. It's not necessarily a campy game, so you're not necessarily going to run into people camping. Sometimes there, of course, will be people over here at the base defending it, but I wouldn't really consider that camping necessarily in this case, because they're defending their objective. Because there are two ways to win in this game mode, either to defeat all the enemies or to capture the base. It doesn't really matter which one you use to win, although you technically gain a lot more in the way of resources and XP and things like that for a capture. So honestly, if you're trying to go and get the technology points and things like that, you're better off going with a capture, to be honest. And this is actually the very first match that I played. Like I said, I just made a very basic modification to mine, and I honestly don't really make significant changes to this basic model at all in all the time that I've played the game. It's basically all been the same sort of style with some modifications here and there. I don't think you'll see it in this video, but you should see it in the next video. I make some modifications to armor around the wheels. I actually go and put armor down in front of the wheels so that my wheels don't get shot out as often, or at least they're harder to shoot out because you'll have to get through that armor first. But yeah, so like I said, though, I think the game's pretty fun. It's fairly simple, but that's not a bad thing in this case. Although, of course, just like all multiplayer games, for me, I don't really get help from my teammates a lot of the time. But this game has not actually been as bad as other ones. And that might just have to do with the fact that you don't need to constantly move. It is possible to stop moving. But there are still some times where you just get like no help from your team whatsoever. But whatever, I can just say screw it when it comes down to some of these, especially since this is earlier tier. So it's not like I'm really expecting too much in the way of my team understanding how the game works. But of course, once I get into higher tiers, max tier for this game is actually tier 10. Once I get to that, honestly, I would kind of expect my team to understand how the game works and, you know, be able to help me if I need help. Because I'm not going to be capable of killing all the enemies all by my lonesome. Some enemies will have very heavily armored vehicles that are just going to have a couple of weapons on them. There will be other enemies that will have very, um, they'll have robots that are not exactly well armored, but they'll have a lot of weapons on them. And that's actually sort of how this game is balanced. There is a maximum CPU load that you have, which increases when you level up, I believe, and also as you advance in tiers, but I don't know about that for certain. I think it could only be when you level up. But either way, but it increases at the very least as you level up. So as time goes on, you need more and more, or because different items require a different amount of CPU load, so you need, as you level up, you'll gain that CPU load that you need to add more weapons and armor and things like that to your robot. But yeah, so like I said, I think it's a pretty fun game. It's interesting, to say the least. And there I go, getting killed. But yeah, and this guy just like got wrecked there. But yeah, like I said, that's sort of how it balances, is that max CPU load. Different weapons and armor require a certain amount of CPU load. All the basic armor takes up just one CPU load. Actually, I think maybe all the armor only takes up one CPU load. But I don't know about that for certain, to be honest. But nonetheless, the weapons, however, change. The basic weapons only take up 10. The tier 1, well, tier 2 weapons, technically, take up... I say tier 2 in this case because they're the very first weapons that you actually unlock via the tech tree. Or they're the actual first weapons you unlock through the tech tree that take up more than 10 CPU load. These actually take up 12, and slowly advances over time. I don't know exactly... I don't think there's a sort of steady increase in how much CPU load is required. I think it's a bit sporadic, potentially. I haven't really looked at it, though, so I can't really say for certain. But that, like I said, that's how they balance it, is... things require a CPU load, and you have a maximum CPU load, so you've got to try to build something that, to be honest, fits your playstyle, but is still actually possible to be built with the limitations that you have in place for yourself. And, of course, as time goes on, these limitations will become less and less of an issue, because as you level up, you won't have to worry so much about CPU load. Exactly when you reach that point, that'll probably be about max level, to be honest. Whatever that is, I don't know. But yeah, so I think once you hit max level, or get close to max level, you really don't have to worry too much about CPU load. But early on, you have to worry a bit more about it. Middle levels, you probably have to still worry about it a bit, but not as often, I guess, best way to describe it. And there's sort of a predictable leveling scale, I guess, the best way to describe it. As it stands right now, I'm still fairly early on in the tier 2 category. So I still sometimes get into a match that has like 1 or 2 tier 1s in it. And that usually just means that those tier 1s are on the higher end of the spectrum for tier 1s. But yeah, so... like I've said like 50 times it seems now, I think it's a fun game. I will have a link in the description where you guys can go ahead and download the game. Of course, again, like I said, you can do it via Steam, but I'm also going to provide a link to their actual website simply due to the fact that it all depends on where exactly you wish to, or because you'll have to register anyway, so it might as well give you that link so that you can go ahead and just register there. While Steam downloads it. But of course you can also download it through their website if you don't want to download it through Steam, because either you don't use Steam or you don't like Steam or whatever the reason is. But yeah, so I'm actually going to go and cut this off, but one thing I'd like to mention before we ended this is that basically every video you see of this game is actually going to contain a couple of battles. That'll usually vary, but you can usually expect, I would say, around 4. As it stands right now, I've got a total enough for 4 videos, and 3 of them have 4 battles in them. 1 of them has 5, but 3 of those 5 are very short, so I probably die like towards the beginning of them. Is probably the best way to describe it for those. while I've got other ones that are longer, which means I survive until the end of it for most of them. Or it just means that match was kind of a slow match. But yeah, so generally speaking, you can expect around 4 battles per video, just because of the fact that the battles are honestly too short for the fact that I like to have my videos be about 10 minutes long. Because I generally have this rule that I've really only recently come up with, to be honest, where if a video is not at least 10 minutes long, I'm not going to monetize it. And generally speaking, that is the case. There might be a couple exceptions here and there, potentially further down the line. But I've even gone so far back as to basically unmonetize a large portion of the videos that I had uploaded initially. But nonetheless. But yeah, that's sort of the general rule that I've come up with. If the video is not at least 10 minutes long, it's not going to be monetized. If the video is labeled with a 0.5 in the title, it will probably not be monetized. And that's just generally how it works, to be honest. But nonetheless, this is actually about to end. So, as always, like, favorite, comment, subscribe, share, and I will see you guys next time. Goodbye.